tell us a bit about yourself, how you came into writing, what influenced you, and anything else that people may not know about you yet that you're, happy to share with us.
I was a lawyer for 17 years, which means I was miserable for 17 years because I have wanted to be a writer since I was a very young girl. And I eventually, when my 5 children were sort of mostly grown up, when our youngest started secondary school, I decided that if I didn't give it a shot then I was never going to do it. And so I enrolled on a creative writing master's degree at Cambridge University, which I finished in 2016, and that was the year that that was my second year of writing the novel, which started as my thesis during my final year of my degree. I submitted the manuscript for the Lucy Cavendish Fiction Prize, for which it was shortlisted, and then my agent, who was one of the judges, offered me representation, and the rest really was history. It was like a dream come true for me. So the book was published in the UK in April 2019 and in North America in May.
So you went from being a lawyer to being now an acclaimed author with a successful debut novel. That's amazing. What inspired the Confessions of Frannie Langton?
I really wanted to write a gothic novel. So the first thing was just to engage with those books that I had loved as a young reader. So my first kind of grown-up reading love were the classic gothic romances like Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, and I wanted to see if I could evoke that kind of breathless suspense that I found and loved in gothic novels. But I really wanted to make a black woman the star of her own gothic romance, because I had become increasingly fed up with looking not only to history but to historical fiction for black characters and seeing nothing but victims. There were never any love stories, there was never any adventure, and I wanted to do something different and to write about a black woman in a historical context who was something other than a pure victim, and who was educated and angry and morally complex, but most importantly in love. I really wanted to give her a love story, and I think that's what motivated me to write this particular novel at this time.
So how do you feel about reviewers and critics actually likening your book to the gothic genre, or saying that it is actually a gothic novel? And how do you feel about people comparing Franny to Jane Eyre or other gothic heroines? How does that make you feel?
I'm comfortable with the comparison, partly because I invited it. So I did, I like to describe Franny as a tribute to Jane Eyre if Jane had cuckolded and murdered Mr. Rochester. I think we never write in a vacuum. All writers have influences, and I was certainly heavily influenced by those books. And I wanted to follow in that tradition. So, I don't think there's anything wrong with a comparison. But at the same time, I think it's really important to recognize that I'm coming at it from a different point of view, because, I've said before, but one of my very strong motivations for writing this book was that those books I loved didn't love me back, that they were not written for readers like me or with readers like me in mind, or with reference to anything really that had been, part of the context of my life growing up. And so, although I wrote a novel that I wanted to cement in the Gothic tradition, I wrote it very much as a black woman coming from it from that perspective.